Brave Maker Show is hosted by Tony Gaffestone and Christina Jackson. Thanks for tuning in. It's showtime.
It's showtime. It's showtime after a long break. We are back. I am so glad to be back on the Brave Maker Show. My name is Tony Gaffestone. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am the founder and executive director of Brave Maker. I'm in the Brave Maker studio with my black background. It says Brave Maker on it. I'm wearing a black shirt. I'm a Caucasian dude with brown hair and some scruff. And I am so happy to be back in the live chair with my creative co-host in banter, Christina Jackson. What's up, Christina?
Hey, Tony, what's going on? It is so good to be back. Summer's been amazing, and it's not over yet.
Not over.
So that's pretty perfect. Yeah, so I am the co-host here with Tony for the Brave Maker Filmmaker Show. Super excited to talk to today's filmmaker. My pronouns are he, she, they. I am in Dublin, California in my studio, and I'm an actor and comic book writer. And actually, we'll get to braving our way, but today's guest has a lot to do with how I'm braving my way this week.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So Christina and we took 2 months off. We decided that the summer needed a break for us both. We have been going, doing our weekly show. We're writing and directing and producing and acting and doing all these things. We're doing our film festival, our online screenings and panel discussions. And so this is our first time back for the new season of the Brave Maker Show. And we've moved it to Wednesdays. If you're watching now live, you see that. If you're watching on the replay, you can join us live every single Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're a nonprofit, so we totally rely on the generosity of our givers and donors. So as you are watching, please share this in your social media feeds, follow our special guests on their socials, promote the work, watch the films, read the books that we promote every week, because this is a passion of ours, and we want to elevate brave stories for justice, diversity, and inclusion. But before we bring our special guest, every week, Christina and I start with one question, and that question is, how are you braving your way toward your creative goals? The whole idea is one step at a time. Whether you're making a film or writing a comic book, it just takes a bunch of little decisions. So Christina, how are you braving your way this week?
I am braving my way with treatments. Nice. I am creating treatments for a whole bunch of different projects. And I would just say, if you have anything in mind, like a film or a comic book, start with the treatment. If you don't know what that is, Google it, or better yet, grab Dan's book. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But treatments are the way to go. It just is a beautiful way to get your idea down on paper in a cohesive manner so that you could share it with other people. Even start pitching. You could pitch with a treatment. And Tony, you've shared some really beautiful treatments with me, and I've been inspired. And so that's what I'm doing. And I also forgot to provide my description. I'm an African-American woman wearing a King T'Challa shirt, and I'm rocking some short black bob today. We'll get into the cosplay of it all a little bit later. But Tony, how are you braving your way this week?
Thanks for asking. So we often talk about on the show that you've got, filmmaking. There's so many parts and elements and collaborations. And one of the things this week, as we're doing our feature film, we are in post-production for our feature film, Last Chance Charlene, in which we wrapped production in June, my very first feature. But right now there's so much communication going on. Sound designer, which huge shout out to Matthew Waters, who's our sound designer. He did Game of Thrones, just worked with Barry Jenkins, Underground Railroad. So right now it's just like lots of communications with our lawyer, getting things ready for when we get E&O insurance. I don't even know sometimes what that means, errors and omissions. And I got to scrape up more money, and I'm fundraising, and I'm asking donors to keep pitching in so we can finish the film, so go after your dreams, y'all, one step at a time, lots of communication, lots of asking people, and lots of collaborations with all different sorts of creative people. So that's how I'm braving my way this week. And it's a perfect segue to our guest, who I have been sort of stalking along the way, that I have been doing this Brave Maker journey, because he's got this really kind of like put it up to the man story with his own filmmaker journey as the co-founder of Slamdance, which we'll get into. And he is a writer and a director, as well as an author of this new book called The Cheerful Subversive's Guide to Independent Filmmaking, the second
Yeah.
edition. So welcome, Dan MIRVISH, to the show.
Hi.
Hi,
guys.
welcome. Dan.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Dan,
Absolutely.
you're super stoked to have you. You're in Los Angeles, right? You're in Culver City. That's right. I know you live in Culver City because you tell us in the book, so I'm not that much of a stalker. But I've been a fan of yours for a while and really grateful to have you on the show to talk about your journey, you know, as a film festival in our 4th year, kind of doing the same thing you did. Like, if Sundance won't let us in, then we'll start our own. You even talk about that in your book. It's so great. So just I guess talk about your, like, right now, what you're doing, you know, presently. Christina will have the next question going back a little bit, but talk about kind of what life looks like for you in LA right now as a filmmaker and author and film festival co-founder.
So I am in post-production, probably a little farther along than you are. We're actually almost finishing color correction, which is the last step in our film. We've already finished sound, and the film is 18 and a half. It is a 70s Watergate conspiracy thriller / dark comedy. And it's got a fun cast, with the voice of Bruce Campbell as Nixon, and Willa Fitzgerald and John Magaro and Vondi Curtis Hall and Kathy Curtin and Richard Kind and Sully Jones, and also the voice of John Cryer and Ted Raimi. Anyway, and fantastic creative partners I've worked on with the film as well. And we shot the film in March of 2020. What could possibly go wrong in March of 2020? So we got about 80% of it in the can, and then had to take a pandemic pause or healthy hiatus with 4 days left to shoot, which we wound up doing exactly 6 months later in September of 2020. So, and basically on this film, I just grabbed the hard drives and came home, and I've been the one editing, you know, the lion's share of it, and just doing everything remotely from home pretty much, which is fine. You know, you do what you got to do. We had, you know, indie film, you have time if you don't have money, and we've had a lot of time. So this is kind of a perfect time to make a movie. And then meanwhile, I was also writing the second edition of my book, The Cheerful Subversive's Guide to Independent Filmmaking, which just came out about a month ago. And I'm also working on the audiobook version of it.
I was going to ask that. Cool.
Yeah, that's actually why I bought the fancy mic. Here. And so I've recorded it, I've edited it, and now I just kind of need to master it and put it up there. But, you know, the film still takes precedent, you know, so we've been submitting to festivals. We've gotten into some festivals that I can't tell you about yet, but there's some good festivals coming up in the fall. But, you know, there's a lot of deliverables you have to do just to get into festivals, or once you're in, you know, just dealing with publicity and stills approval from all the actors, and bio approvals from the actors, and you know, and it's a, you know, even though we have fantastic actors that are all real team players, it's a lot of work, and just managing like that approval process is complicated. But, you know, everyone's excited about the film, and so am I. And then trying to somehow eventually sell the film too, but that's a whole other process.
So y'all, as you listen to Dan talk about 18 and a half, his website is in the chat. Will also be in the show notes, dmirvish.com. He talks about the making of 18 and a half in this book, and it's just so good. This is seriously like a masterclass. You don't got to go to film school. Just buy this freaking book. Buy this book and learn how to make a film from beginning to end, from the writing to the casting to the directing and raising funds. To I mean, it's so damn well. Seriously, I ate this thing up. I am loving it. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks. Yeah. So yes, and of course, people can buy the book anywhere fine books are sold, which is to say Amazon, or you can go directly to. I actually just found out the publisher, which is Focal Press in Rutledge, is having a 20% off back to school sale right now. So
get that back to school cash off.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the audiobook, when it does come out, will actually probably be cheaper. So if you like audiobooks, but you don't get the pictures. So my kids did some of the illustrations, and there's some good photos in there too.
I love audiobooks, so I'm super excited to hear that it will soon be
Good.
available on audio. Yes, Dan, the book is such a gift. Tony introduced the book to me, so thank you for that. Got me on the right path with my treatments because there's a lot going on, and it's like, where do I start? Get the idea down on paper in a way you could share it with others. And so, yeah, the book is phenomenal. But let's back up a lot.
Sure.
So I've been immersed in comic book world for a while now. And one of my favorite stories to hear are origin stories. So Dan, if you could share with us, where were you born and raised, and how did you end up in filmmaking and entertainment and an author?
Yeah, well, after being dropped in a vat of radioactive waste.
Here we go.
That's something different. No, I was born in Madison, Wisconsin, but I basically grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and hence the if you see back there, which finger there? It says Omaha
It's
behind
weird
me.
mirrored. Yeah,
yeah, I know. I can't. There you go. Is that
There
say
you go.
Omaha?
There you got it.
That's
You got it.
Okay.
He's pointing to his poster in the
There you
background.
go. Yeah, which is a weird vertical poster, which is a whole other weird story. But they were free, so you do what you can. Yeah, so I grew up in Omaha, and then went to college in St. Louis, and then I did some summer classes in film at UCLA, which is great, one summer. And then I took a bit of a detour away from film. I majored in history and poli-sci because I went to a school that didn't really have a film department, although I had one good film professor there. And then I worked in DC for a couple of years as a journalist, and then mainly as a speechwriter to a senator, and then applied to film school. And the only one I got into was USC. So I'm like, all right, I'll go there. And so I went to USC for film school. Then after the first summer, got a job on a kickboxing movie in the Philippines, and learned a ton of how to make a movie from beginning to end. And that's a clip from Open House, which was my 2004 real estate musical, which was a lot of fun to make. And there's a lot of great videos on there. There's Anthony Rapp, who's running for SAG Secretary Treasurer this week. Wonderful guy, Jimmy Duvall there. Yeah, that was a fun cast, and very low budget, but we also did a whole Oscar campaign, which I talk about in the book. And it actually changed the rules of the Academy Awards with that film. So that was, I think, my second film. But anyway, while I was at SC, I did I figured out a loophole where I could do a full-length feature as my thesis film. And so I made this film, Omaha, the movie, that you see behind me. I went back to Nebraska and shot that. And my local producing partner was a guy named Dana Altman. And coincidentally, his grandfather was Robert Altman. So he kind of became our mentor on the film. And then we finished the film. We shot on 35 millimeter, all with local cast and crew, edited the film for free on the Paramount lot. I mean, the rental was free. So that was fun. And then it didn't get into Sundance. That's the short version. So we started
like so many others before you.
Exactly.
And after you.
Exactly. And yeah, a lot more after. So anyway, and that was really, it was a pivotal time. It was around 1995, 94, 95. And that was a time when, indie film was kind of changing. It was around that time that Miramax had just become part of Disney. Fine Line had just become part of Warner Brothers. And those, sorry, I'm getting all distracted by watching old clips, but, and so it was kind of the Hollywoodization of independent film was happening right around that time. And so Sundance kind of was going along for that ride. And so they went from taking, lots of cool first-time indie feature filmmakers to taking second-time directors and films with bigger budgets and films that already had distribution and that sort of thing. And so they left behind this niche of the first-time indie filmmakers like me. And so, I teamed up. There was it wasn't just me; it was a bunch of us who all had films, and a bunch of us had met at the Independent Feature Film Market, which is now called Film Week, run by now it's called Gotham. It was IFP, anyway, so we had met there, and then we thought, and we had heard of a couple individual filmmakers the year before didn't get into Sundance, and that was Trey Parker and Matt Stone with their first film, Cannibal the Musical, the South Park guys, and also a guy named James Marandino had a little film called The Upstairs Neighbor. They didn't get into Sundance in '94. And they had done their own little renegade screenings. And so we'd heard about these guys, and we thought, oh, well, if they can do that, maybe that should be our plan B. And then one of the other filmmakers that first year, a guy named Shane Kuhn, he said, why don't we take that idea, and also an idea that my producing partner, Dana Altman, had because Dana was stuck in Omaha. So he was kind of amorphously thinking of what can we all do to help each other, on a grassroots level. And so we kind of combined those ideas, and we thought, well, let's just show up in Park City. And in the end, we wound up with a dozen features and a dozen shorts. My friend Paul Rackman had kind of spearheaded the shorts side of it, and with his short film, and we just showed up in Park City. Well, first we were mistaken. We showed up in Salt Lake City. We looked at the map wrong, and and so we went to the University of Utah, and of course, then no one was showing up. And we're like, but on the map, it's only 5 minutes away. What? And then by the next day, two of our filmmakers, Lisa Raven and Frank Hudek, who had a film called Low, I went with them. We rented some 60 millimeter projector and a screen, and we hightailed it up to Park City, and we rented a screening room literally 30 feet down the hall from one of Sundance's main venues. And that was it. Then we were right there with them, and have been for the last 28 years. So that's the short version.
The history of Slamdance there.
That's amazing.
Exactly.
Super amazing. 30 years now? Is that what it's been about?
Almost, yeah.
Almost like 30 years.
28 years. Something
And
crazy.
I just saw you announced Miami. Basically, you're taking Slamdance to Miami, Florida.
Yeah, which is something I think we were supposed to do last year, and then the pandemic hit. So that was delayed until now. But yeah, we've got some filmmaking and alumni friends in Miami, and they wanted to do an event there. So it's sort of a cooperative event down in Miami.
That's so cool. So I want to go back to your book. And by the way, any one of you listening or watching on the replay or listening on the podcast, Dan goes into so many great details. Like, there's so many gems in this book. Some really fun, not only fun behind the scenes stories with name dropping actor, celebrity types, but poetry. I guess every year,
Yes,
you write a poem, which is super cool. And I've been to Slamdance to the talks. I've never been to a film screening, so I got to get there.
Right.
Sometime, but it's such a different vibe. I almost feel like it's punk rock, hardcore. It is this like really experimental, artistic edge, and you are really focused on first-time filmmakers.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is really a beautiful thing. But this book, in its second edition, you talk a lot about. It's really current about distribution stuff, about the landscape that's constantly changing. So you're probably gonna have to do a third edition in a year or two. Who knows? Things change so fast. But I love that you also talk about pandemic stuff, which is super true to us now and probably will be true to us in 2022. How do we make films? But I wanted to talk just a couple things. I've, again, underlined a million things. You talk about hiring and firing crew. And I'm really interested in that because I find myself, challenged in this space. I am a people person. I love the collaboration process, but it's hard when you start navigating the space and you figure out, people, we all have different expectations, and there are just different personalities, and sometimes they don't jive. And when you have the vision to tell a story and someone who's not aligning with that vision, how it's really, you talk about, getting rid of them quickly and that kind of thing. I wonder if you could just share some of your thoughts, maybe tips and tricks when it comes to putting crews together. Because
where'd I go?
Where
am I? There I am.
Oh, you're there. You're there.
Yeah.
We see you. Just share anything about your thoughts about how filmmakers.
Hang on, I'm just switching Wi-Fi.
Oh, maybe he's breaking up on his end.
Okay.
Well, as Dan does that, I will just, again, promote this book by saying he talks so much about every single process. You back, Dan? You there? And, from the editing to the distribution to the finding your producers and that kind of thing. I think it's really important for people who want to make movies, first of all, you got to have a good idea. You got to write that good idea. You got to raise money to make that idea, but then you got to find the right crew. And so that's what I'd like to have Dan chat a little bit about some kind of tips and tricks for really finding the right crew. And then when you maybe think you found the right crew and they don't work out, how to minimize those crew from detracting from your vision. Dan, thoughts on hiring and firing crew?
Well, the trick is to find people. Is if you can to try to find people that are aligned with you, not just creatively, but also, temperamentally, that are with you for the vision. If you can find them initially, then you don't have to fire anyone. The advantage to doing like a low budget indie film is that, it's an advantage and disadvantage. The good side is that nobody's getting paid much money. That's the bad side, is nobody's getting paid much money. If you're paying people a ton of money, in some ways it's easier to fire them because, well, hey, you made a lot of money your first 3 days. See you later, and they're like, all right, great, I got paid. But in a weird way, if you're not paying people much money at all and things aren't working out relationship wise on set or creatively on set, then in some ways that's easy too, because they may go, you know what, this wasn't worth it anyway, I'm out of here, and okay, great, bye, see ya, and so sometimes that can work out. Like they may want to leave more than you want to get rid of them, and once you figure that out, then it's really easy. But I think you're sort of hit on sort of an underlying theme of the book, which is that anyone can teach the nuts and bolts or learn the nuts and bolts of and the craft of filmmaking, either through film school or through getting jobs or just through YouTube. But I think what I go into maybe a bit more uniquely is the interpersonal relationships that you need to have and need to build and forge and maintain when you're making these independent films. Are you guys still there?
100%.
Yeah.
We're still here. You're not just talking into the void. No, we hear that. We definitely talk a lot about that. Finding your right crew and those relationships are paramount when you're, basically working for food sometimes on these low budget indie films. You got to find people who just are in it with you, who love the work and are willing to work late and hard and do whatever it takes to make a movie. So I totally 100% agree.
Yeah.
Christina.
Absolutely. Yeah, Dan, you seem to be such a solutions-driven human being. So I'm dying to know, what kind of obstacles are you facing now as an author, as a Film Fest founder, as a filmmaker, and how are you rising to the occasion and overcoming some of those obstacles?
Well, there was a pandemic this year, and we just kind of made the most of it. So for example, like I said, we had to wrap with 80% of the movie in the can. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to edit it myself and edit the footage I did have. And then there were some things we were going to do in post, like music, obviously, but also recording our voice performers, because we have this it's a recurring thing. There's this Nixon tape. It's all about the missing 18.5 minute gap in the Nixon tapes. And so we knew we had, Bruce Campbell and John Cryer and Ted Raimi on board. And we were just the plan was always to shoot them sometime in post-production. So when we had this pandemic pause, we're like, well, why don't we do it now? All these actors have kind of normalized being on Zoom and doing podcasts and interviews and things like that. So we're like, all right, let's just do it remotely. They were all in 3 different cities. So honestly, it was a lot cheaper to do it that way than it would have been to get a studio and get them all together in LA or something. So we kind of did it by Zoom, but then also had them record separately on like quick, different kinds of QuickTime files. They all had kind of slightly different systems. So we had the Zoom so we could all see each other and sync things up later. But then we had, better quality audio that they would just send me later on. They would just email me those files. And that was like a perfect example of where, okay, there's a pandemic. How can we make this work, to our advantage? And honestly, it was a lot cheaper and simpler and faster doing it that way than we ever would have thought about doing, had it not been. So it was things like that, and being able to work with my composer, even though we weren't done with the film. Normally you finish the film, you lock picture, and then you start working on the music. In our case, I mean, I'm very tight with my composer, Luis Guerra, and we'd worked on my last film together. And we'd already, even while we were in the writing stage of the script, had some of the music figured out, because there's like original bossa nova songs that we wrote. And so again, during that sort of 6-month hiatus, we were able to say, you know what, we don't know what the exact timing is going to be, because the editing isn't done, but we know pretty much what most of these scenes are going to be. So why don't we get together with a singer we found a Brazilian singer in LA, Caro Pieroto, and worked with her, and she could, and we could work with her safely during the pandemic, because musicians are in their little booths and protected by glass, and working, and Luis was working with musicians in Mexico and Brazil. So things like that we could do remotely during that time. So we never really wasted time, which I think was a nice thing. Like every day during the pandemic, the film was moving forward. It may have been a little step, it may have been 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but there was never a day where we were waiting. And even though we were still raising money, I mean, the whole time. And of course, we had to raise a lot more money because we knew we'd have to go back and do all the COVID protection things. So we were still raising money that whole time, but we never slowed down the creative process. There was always something going on. And I think that's a key thing, to keep in mind, regardless of what you're, whether it's a comic book or a movie or a script or writing a treatment, is as long as you're making some forward progress every day. It doesn't really matter how fast you're going, as long as it's moving somewhat forward. And so that's kind of what kept us going. Like, hey, we're making progress here. And honestly, it's fine. We were in no rush. It's not like festivals were live, so we weren't missing out on anything. It's not like distributors were rushing to pick up films. So we're like, let's take our time, with this thing, and creatively just make the best film we can, and then we'll worry about selling it and seeing if anybody likes it.
I love that, 1 step at a time. We always talk about braving your way forward, one week at a time. Even if you look at your year, doing one thing a week. If you just did one thing a week, how much you could accomplish in a year. Yeah. The fundraising part, the asking, for help, that's such a huge part of it. I wanted to show I believe it was one of your crowdsourcing videos that you have on Vimeo. And we'll chat a little bit about this, as we have a lot of viewers who are trying to make their films and trying to figure out strategies to raise their funds. This is a great example of how to do that. So stand by for Dan's 18.5 video fundraising video.
Hi, I'm Dan MIRVISH. Some of you may know me as a co-founder of the Slamdance Film Fest. Slamdance book author, writer, and the director of several award-winning films is Omaha the Movie, Open House, Between Us, or Bernard and Huey. Are you on the lam? I'm here in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, in front of the iconic Watergate Hotel that ultimately led to the cover-up that led to the downfall of the Nixon presidency. And that is what my new film, 18.5, that's the name of it, is all about. It's about the missing 18.5-minute gap in the Nixon tapes, because he taped himself in the White House. Somehow, 18.5 minutes erased. Well, whatever happened to them?
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook.
Well, this film is going to answer that question. And it's very relevant to today's time, because presidential power gone amok, gone awry, gone akimbo. A scandal at the White House? That's crazy talk.
Well, I'm not a crook.
It's exciting, it's historical, but fictional, there's action, and there's romance, and there's intrigue. It's a real throwback to the 70s conspiracy thrillers.
What I know is I need a good alias and I need a good idea.
I'm going to be directing this film, and I'm writing with my dear friend Daniel over here.
I'm Daniel, I'm writing 18.5. Super excited about the project. We're shooting on Long Island, where I grew up. It means a lot to me, working with Harry at the Silver Sands Motel out in Greenport. It's beautiful.
Silver Sands was built in 1957, a time of American idealism. No one has ever shot a full feature film here. We've been the home of lots of great fashion editorials, Harper's Bazaar, Vogue, Supermodels have sat on this car. We need your help to make this possible, to shoot the first great film shot at the Silver Sands Motel.
But the Silver Sands is only closed down for a few months in the winter, so that means we need to shoot soon. We've started casting, and we've already got big Hollywood actors who want to be in the movie. We've even started writing the original soundtrack.
Got the
We've raised some of the money already, but now we need your help to spread the word and become part of the team that's making this historic film. For just a small donation, you'll follow the ups and downs of casting, choose amazing swag, get your name in the credits.
So these are some of our backers.
And maybe even visit the set or come to our festival premiere. Whether through crowdfunding, investing in the film, a tax-deductible donation, or doing product placement, there's lots of ways you can be a part of 18 and a half. Thank you.
Such a great video. So fast moving, says all the stuff that it needs to say. I hope those of you who are watching live or on the replay, please. And if you're watching live, you can put questions in the comments. We have people who are saying thanks. They're excited to get your book. Nicole says she already has your book when you came to the Noam Kroll Backlaw, which is cool.
Yeah,
Who's
great.
Got her hands on your stuff already. Now that video is again talked about in here. You'll hear all about the hotel in which they filmed at. Now in the book, there's kind of a cliffhanger about the hotel because it was going to be sold. So I'm wondering, is it sold?
No.
Okay.
It has not yet been sold, but it was still wound up being a good idea that we shot when we did.
Perfect.
That was the thing that really drove us to going back and shooting in September of 2020 was that, there was a potential that the hotel was going to get sold. So we were like, oh, we all got to go back. And
incentivized.
Luckily all the casting crew were available then. And it turned out to be a good window because people did get busy after that. And then, the pandemic kind of came and went and, has had up and down. So it wound up being good. I'm glad we went when we did. So, yeah.
So Dan, we ask for advice and, filmmakers to share, their stories from the trenches. And we kind of always say, what's your advice for people to make movies? And everyone always says, go make it, which we say that all the time too. But I want to get some specific maybe thoughts on some best practices as a director, you've directed, on how directors can work with actors and actors, things that they can do to better work with directors. Every director is different, every actor is different. But from your perspective, what's worked for you in the past and what hasn't? What things should we do and what things should we avoid?
Right. Well, the thing I learned from Robert Altman, but also heard it from other directors was 90% of directing is casting. And so I spend a lot of time casting. And trying to meet with actors and not even necessarily audition them, because if the more famous actors, the less likely you are to actually do an audition. But if I can meet with them, have coffee with them, or talk on the phone, or that kind of thing, it makes a really huge difference. I like actors that are smart and have their own take on the character and on the material overall. And I want them to feel like they like the whole script, they're not just doing it for their part. Although ultimately that is the way you get an actor, is to make sure their part is good and has monologues and is going to get screen time. That's what actors pretty much look for, but if they kind of see the whole vision of the film too, I think that makes for better performance and a more collaborative environment on set. Like if they're also looking out for the other actors, like, oh wait, would your character say that, or would and like, what can I do to make your character, say the right thing, or does this, if they've got ideas on finishing the movie, like rewriting the ending, which I've had a lot of actors do, and to the betterment of most of the films too. That's great. And so I think when you have a good 2-hour coffee with an actor, or Zoom call, if you can, that makes a big difference. I've also done rehearsal. We didn't really do rehearsal on 18 and a half, or not much rehearsal, but on Bernard and Huey, my last film, that was kind of the sweet spot. Like we did on my film Between Us, we did almost 2 weeks rehearsal, which I think was too long. Bernard and Huey, we did about 3 or 4 days, and that was kind of right on the money. That was great, because it just gets. It's not so much that it's not a play, so it's not like you're doing it because you're trying to get everybody off book and memorize the script. But what it does is it gets everybody kind of on the same page in terms of chemistry and pacing, especially if you have an ensemble cast, and so different actors are in different scenes. and they may never see each other on set, but you kind of all want them to be part of the same movie. And so you can do that in rehearsal because they, one actor can come in and see another actor rehearsing, go, oh, okay, that's kind of the pace and the style and the level of comedy versus drama that we're doing in this film. And they can kind of calibrate their own performance to what they see the other actors doing. And so you can kind of dial that stuff in during rehearsal in a way that's harder on set. That said, if the circumstances are what they happen to be, and you can't rehearse, at least have the actors spend time together. On 18 and a half, we didn't really have the luxury of rehearsal time, but the actors, at least in the initial shoot, were, they had to drive for 3 hours together in a car just to get to set. And then, then their rooms were right next to each other. We were all staying at the same place and staying, the cast and crew were all staying together. So that kind of vibe really helped. It really built that sort of intrinsic chemistry into the relationships among the actors. But then by the same token, we had some other characters come in like a week later with, who had just been cast like 36 hours before. Nobody knew what they were going to do. And that, in a weird way, that worked too, because then the reactions that the other actors had to those performances was, it worked in the context of the film. Like, oh, they really were surprised by what these characters were going to do. And so that was fun, seeing how not having rehearsal can also in some ways work to your advantage. Sorry, I'm reading quotes from myself there.
No need.
I thought I was reading comments from someone else. Like, oh wow, that's a brilliant thing someone said. But
Dan, speaking of cast, before we get to that next question, we have these 6 degrees of separation. So you cast Sullivan Jones, who was on our podcast over a year ago. I met him when I was in New York. He was in a film that I executive produced, A Surrogate, and then I saw him in Slave Play, and I just thought it's so funny. Wow. He was on our show, and he's a great guy, and so I'm excited to see him and what he did in the film. So shout out to Sullivan. I love him.
We were just texting all week because we've been doing like photo approvals and bio approvals and things like that. But yeah, he was great to work with, and he was someone like who I think 3 days before he came out, this was in the September part of the shoot, he reminded me, because we had met, like I said, we'd had coffee, for like an hour and a half, like 6 months earlier, and then and then we had this break. And then he's like, oh yeah, you remember I mentioned I'd play guitar? Should I bring my guitar out there? And I was like, yeah, you should bring your guitar. And then that night, Luis and I wrote a song for him. That's and amazing. he showed up, and we're like, by the way, you know that guitar you brought? We wrote a song for you to sing. He's like, wait, is this a musical? I was
That's
like,
awesome.
Well, it is. Maybe it is now.
Yeah.
And so he did it. He pulled it off, and it's a great song, and it's, he sings it live in one take. And and the rest of the cast were like, hang on a second, are we doing a musical now? I was like, you never know with me, so
I love it. And you found that because you spent time with him, because that relationship was there.
Exactly. Because I knew he played guitar and he brought it up. So, but yeah, and I knew he had a stage background, and anyone that's done theater, I mean, not that Slave Play is a musical, but
he played violin in it. So
he did. All right. Yeah. See, I never saw it. My producing partner, Daniel Moy, he saw the play, but I never got a chance to because I live in LA. But yeah, no, he's phenomenal in the film. He plays Barry the hippie, and he's great. He's great in the film.
Great.
I want to jump back to the film fest. So I'm working on 2 documentaries right now. I'd love to see them, in some film festivals. What should filmmakers know if you get into a film festival to really have a phenomenal experience and really make the most of that opportunity?
That's a great idea. Well, assuming it's a live festival, which, not all festivals are going to be live for a little while still. Some are, but a lot of them are staying online longer than they thought they were going to. But assuming it's a live festival, I mean, I think, I love going to festivals. For me, it is your theatrical release. Even if you get a quote unquote theatrical release later, doesn't mean very many people are going to see your film. But at a festival, most festivals do a pretty good job filling the theaters for you. even so, you still have to be there promoting the film, passing out flyers, putting up posters, going to other people's films, seeing them, meeting other filmmakers. I think the most interesting thing that you get out of going to a film festival, and the most valuable thing, is the thing that you don't think about beforehand, and that is meeting other filmmakers who will then become your friends for life, your collaborators, your buddies, in some cases your spouse, so that those relationships are probably the most important relationships you're going to get out of festivals, and probably the least important thing that you think you're going to get out of a festival. But that said, there's also like, spend time with your audience, because those people are going to be investors on your next film. You never know. So, I mean, I have one, Tony, I don't know if you read this part, but like, if you're trying to raise money, go to a film festival, don't bring your own car, but hang out in parking lots, find the fanciest car you can find of a festival attendee, because they're probably a sponsor of the festival and have fancy tickets, and then try to bum a ride from them to the next venue. And now you've got a captive audience for 20 minutes with the richest person in town. And if you can't turn that into a potential future investor, you're just not trying.
You've got a lot of fun little ideas like that.
Yeah.
Talking about going to Park City, not knowing where you're going to stay, and couch surfing, and I like that. Like I love that.
Fearless.
I think, that's the kind
it's
of
a very
fearless
approach, Dan.
That's right. You've got to be relentless. You got to be fearless. I wholeheartedly agree. I love that you're pointing out the relationships that can start at a film festival can be lifelong. It's huge.
Yeah. No, you can also end relationships at film festivals too, so you got to be careful. But
you talk about that kind of in a bookend way. You start the book talking about getting your crew, and then you kind of end the book in a way that says, now when you get to the film screening, there's going to be someone else mad at you because you maybe left them out of the credits, or you didn't give them what they thought they were going to expect. And those managing relationships is
or just the fact that you get to go to the film festival because you're the director, and that means, by definition, nobody else is there. None of the rest of your cast and crew. So they're all jealous of you. You're, down in Barbados having a great time on the beach, hanging out with Sigourney Weaver, and they're like, "Well, hang on a second. I thought we were making a little indie film. How do I not? Why stand down there?
Did you get to hang out with Sigourney Weaver, Dan?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, the Barbados Independent Film Festival. It's a great festival, by the way. They wanted me to shout out that they are taking submissions right now for February.
Nice. And Dan has a huge index of film festivals at the back of the book.
The appendix, my secret list.
Secret list, and a couple of them have some notations. So check it out. This is such a good resource. The Cheerful Subversive's Guide to Independent Filmmaking. And the Cheerful Subversive was a label you got, I believe, from the New York Times. Back in the 90s.
Yeah, they wrote a piece about Slamdance, and after interviewing me, I was the one they interviewed. They called us a group of cheerful subversives. So I guess I just grabbed that title.
Got to love that.
But it is kind of like everything I've done, whether it's been books or films or other projects. It's kind of imbued everything I've done. It's like, you know what, we're only on this world a limited time, so have fun, smile. Try to keep other people happy and not mad at you, and if you can create a little art along the way, great. But
perfect advice, right?
Yeah.
Well, Dan, thank you. Stick around. We're gonna do our Brave Faves of the week.
Brave Faves. TV shows, films, books, songs, technology, clothing, podcast, food, and more. These are a few of our favorite people, places, and things. Brave Faves.
All right, it's our favorite time of the week. Christina, we'll start with you. What are you faving this week?
What am I faving? I'm in Marvel Universe as always. And if you are a fan of animation, this is Marvel Studios' first animation. It's called What If. They have new episodes every Wednesday. This is imagine a multiverse of unlimited possibilities, and it's just phenomenal. You'll love it. You'll love all their decisions, all the animation, the audio. It is directed by Bradley Andrews. Is that right? Brian Andrews, excuse me. Brian Andrews is the director. AC Bradley is the head writer. And it's just good. It's just fun. It's absolutely amazing. So that is my Brave Fave.
Right on. Dan, what do you want to fave this week? What's getting you?
I just watched a weird doubleheader on TC. I watch a lot of Turner Classic Movies because I can't figure out how streaming channels work. So I just watch cable. And I saw a 1949 film, 12 O'Clock High with Gregory Peck, which is a great film. But the interesting thing is I also watch on, I don't know, some basic cable channel, the TV series 12 O'Clock High, which was done in the early mid 60s. And the weird thing is seeing how a TV series evolved from a feature. I mean, you know, we all know like MASH started as a feature and went to a series. And it's interesting seeing that because, you know, because honestly, I mean, we're pitching 18.5 as a potential episodic springboard. And so it's funny to see examples from when 80 years ago, you know, where that happened 70 years ago, of how people, you know, take a transmedia approach to, okay, or an IP approach. That's the buzzword now, right? Like you have a film, that's your base for your IP. How do you turn it into a series or a comic book, or how do you turn a comic book into this? And so it's interesting seeing different adaptations of the same material. And of course, both were, oh, there it is. Oh my gosh, there's 12 O'Clock High. And there's Gregory Peck in the background. And of course, that itself was based on a book, you know, based on World War II. So so it's been interesting using like these old, you know, looking at these old, you know, movies and TV series, which are still hold up amazingly well. You know, it's amazing. You know, I wish I could cast Gregory Peck, but and then
maybe
and
you
then,
you could go back in time with your next
I know,
film.
or just do some deep fake.
That's right, deep fakes.
AI work on his voice. Yeah, easy peasy. You know, so.
Great.
Anyway,
12 O'Clock High, Turner Classic.
Yeah,
yes.
It was. It's funny. They use some of the same footage. They use some of the same dialogue in the series as the movie. And I was like, can they do that? Is that?
That's great. Cool.
Good.
Well, my brave fave is a limited series called I Hate Susie on HBO Max. It is a really great British comedy series that actually dabbles in genre. It does kind of a horror episode. It does a comedy. You know, it really plays with all of these different kind of genre bending things. And I love shows about the industry as a filmmaker and actor. I love shows. And it's about Lucy Pickles, who was a teen pop star, becomes an actor, who then in the prime of her acting career, when she's just about to become a huge Disney princess, she gets some nudes leaked from her phone. And it deals with how the industry, how the public deal with women. And it's a great kind of case study in regards to grief and how one processes that type of disruption and invasion in their life. And I love it. I had never heard of the actor before, Billy Piper, who also is one of the creators, and Lucy Preble created it as well. It's just super fun, a great little romp of a 8-episode show. So check it out. I Hate Susie on HBO Max. All right. Well, that's all we got. Dan, thank you so much for being with us.
No, thank you. Sorry, my wife is going to Costco, so let me know if anyone needs anything.
Oh gosh, give me a hot dog.
We need seaweed chips.
That's
Let's
right.
get it back now.
Dan, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Well, they can come to Culver City, but I won't let them in my house, not without a mask. They can find me on I'm on Twitter at Dan Mirvish. That's it. And I think that, and then I'm starting to use Instagram more. That's at dmirvish, and also Facebook dmirvish. On the, I think I'm on Clubhouse too, but I haven't been on there in a few months. So
I want to thank you for spotlighting me on your Instagram. I posted a picture of me with your book.
Thanks. Yeah,
in a very
that was
intimate
awesome.
position, me in my bed holding your book.
Well, there you go. Well, I hope you're wearing pants, but
I love it. I
doesn't matter to me. You can enjoy the book however you want.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and then the book itself, you can get it on Amazon, or as I say, go to Rutledge. I think they're having a discount right now. But or you can just go to. I have a trailer for the book is on my website which is at dmirvish.com, and then also updates on 18 and a half will be at dmirvish.com too.
Sweet. Well, hey, stick around for just 2 minutes. We'll do our outros, and we'd love to do a picture with you. Yeah, I love that cup. Look at that swag. Those of you who are listening to the audio, he's showing a white coffee mug with the 18 and a half logo. It's beautiful. Butcher knife. Oh, that's so cool.
It is beautiful.
Christina, tell us what's coming up next week.
Yes, so make sure to tune in next week after our regularly scheduled program at 4 p.m. with director Ali Ginsberg. We are going to have a special screening of Their Activists, and we will have filmmaker Dana Johnson on with us at 6 p.m. So tune in next week for that screening. If you haven't already, make sure you have liked, subscribed, and turn on notifications for the Brave Maker channel so you know when our screening starts next Wednesday.
I love it. And don't forget, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. If you want to donate any amount, that's $5 to $5 million, we will take it. You can use your phone. Just text the word Brave Maker to 44321 or go to our website at bravemaker.com. Make sure you follow us on all the socials. We're on Instagram at Brave Maker Film Fest. Our YouTube is bravemaker.org, O-R-G. And if you want to get in touch with us and hear about what's happening on a bi-weekly basis, we send out an email just twice a month. Go to bravemaker.com/buzz, and you'll find out about all of our film screenings, our opportunities for screenwriting workshops, our auditions for our films, and other fun stuff that you all creative people will love and enjoy. So that's all we have for today, Dan. And we're super glad for our guest, Dan. We're going to take a picture with you afterwards. But until then, brave stories change the world.
And you are the story. Goodbye, everybody.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at bravemaker.org. Like, subscribe, and share. To become a monthly donor, text the word Brave Maker to 44321 or go to bravemaker.com/donate. Thanks for tuning in.